Frank Warren has lost his £2 million lawsuit against his former fighter Ricky Burns. Ricky Burns left Frank Warren and went to join Eddie Hearn, and apparently there was a problem in doing that, so the situation ended up in court. And according to this article on BoxingScene.com, the judges ruled in favour of Ricky Burns, and he will now get £102,000 for unpaid purse fees for his successful world title fight with Kevin Mitchell, which was over 2 years ago. But at the same time, because of getting that purse, he'll have to personally pay Frank Warren the sum of £72,000 because of management commission, which is management commission, which apparently Ricky Burns never knew about. That's interesting, the remarks that the judge made about Frank Warren. And I'm quoting directly from BoxingScene.com here. It says, the judge dismissed Warren's claim as fanciful and said that it bore no relation to reality. He also said that he described Frank Warren's evidence as untruthful, unrealistic, and unreliable. And the article also goes on to mention the fact that Warren had previously been found to have lied in his litigation with Joe Calzaghe. So there you have it. Warren has to pay Ricky Burns £102,000, but Burns has to deduct £73,000 out of that money. So Burns is probably going to be getting about, roughly 28 grand or something like that from Frank Warren. That's basically what it amounts to. Interesting that Frank Warren lost a court case because he don't often lose them. Did he lose the Joe Calzaghe court case? I think he did, but the majority of court cases Frank Warren wins. That's why he's so willing to go to court. And Frank Warren is notorious in the boxing industry for suing people all the time and taking people to court, even over stuff they say on Twitter and Facebook. This guy is just out of control with the amount of legal action he wants to take over the pettiest, littlest things. It's incredible, really. And I've been telling people for a long time that Frank Warren is, in my opinion, he's not of sound character. Let's just put it that way. And Eddie Hearn in a recent interview was talking about the shenanigans with the Eubanks and Frank Warren, and that the Eubanks have been making it very difficult for Frank Warren. And Eddie Hearn's comment on the situation was, it's two control freaks clashing heads. I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what he said, two control freaks. And I've been saying this for time. Frank Warren is a control freak. The guy is just too much. Anyone who knows anyone that's dealt with Frank Warren, any professional fighters who've actually dealt with Frank Warren, these fighters will tell you, right? A lot of them will tell you Frank Warren is a control freak. And that's something that's it's never sat well with me about Frank Warren. The way he deals with fighters has just never sat well with me. And he actually came out recently. I found this funny. He came out recently and said that he basically accused Tim Witherspoon of lying, because Tim Witherspoon apparently has a book out, which just recently published. And in the book, he claims that he took a dive in his fight with Bone Crusher Smith, which he lost in the first round. And Frank Warren says that he's just lying basically to sell the book. But the problem with that accusation by Frank Warren is that I know for a fact that Tim Witherspoon said this long before his book was ever published. He said this about 3-4 years ago in an interview with Steve Bunce. I believe it was on Setanta. I remember him saying that he took a dive. He said, I understood what was supposed to happen. He was with Don King at the time and he took a dive in the first round. He's already said this way before the book was ever written and published. So there goes that theory, Frank Warren, I'm afraid. Frank Warren says there's no corruption, or he hasn't seen any corruption in boxing. It only used to happen back in the days when gangsters were involved. It really makes me scratch my chin and scratch my head when someone like Frank Warren says stuff like that. Because you got other guys like Teddy Atlas constantly coming out all the time saying corruption is rife in boxing. Frank Warren says he's never seen a fighter take a dive. In all his years in boxing, he's never seen a guy take a dive. Do you believe that? And Frank Warren was one of Don King's right-hand men for a long time. This guy says he's never seen a fighter take a dive. Warren has been in the boxing business from what, the 70s? Never seen a guy take a dive. Okay. Personally, I don't buy that. That's just me. But drop your comments below. What do you feel about this court case with Warren and Burns and the ruling and all that? What are your feelings on Frank Warren in general? And what are your feelings on corruption in boxing, fighters taking dives and what have you? I don't think fighters taking dives is as common as it used to be. Certainly not. But it certainly, as far as I'm concerned, still happens. It still happens, and there's still corruption in boxing. It just, what do you want to describe as corruption? That's the thing. You know, when people talk about corruption, what do you mean by corruption? That's, you know, corruption to me is just anything that is dishonest or slimy. You know, like fighters getting rankings which they don't deserve. To me, that's corrupt. It might not be corrupt in a legal sense because these sanctioning bodies make their own rules, literally. So it might not be illegal in that sense, but it's still dishonest and it's disingenuous to rank fighters based on your relationship with their manager or your relationship with their promoter or whatever the case may be. To me, that's dishonest, you know. Anyway, drop your comments below. This is Hatman. I'm out.